we constantly diminish the value of care when the system is not in support of it or telling us that that's what we need. Hi everyone and welcome back to No Place Like Home. I am your host Larissa and I'm joined by Kath again. Welcome back.
Hello, thanks for having me.
I'm going to try and really keep my cool today because we're talking about a topic that will often get me going on a rant, but I have strict instructions from producer Rach to not do that. So we'll see how we go. We are talking about the cost of postpartum care.
We are.
Now, if you haven't listened to Kath's previous episode around getting to know Kath a bit more, Kath is a registered nurse, spent a lot of years as a theatre nurse and then moved into the corporate world of private health insurance for 7 years.
Yeah, just over 7 years.
Yeah. So we've got a lot to... We've got a lot of knowledge here in this room between the both of us in terms of me delving into this world, not knowing anything, and then also your incredible experience on both sides of the system, should we call it.
Yeah.
We know the numbers, So we know that 1 in 5 women, mothers, will experience postnatal depression and anxiety, and 1 in 10 fathers will experience the same. There's lots of varying degrees of perinatal mood disorders.
Absolutely.
And, you know, we're getting to know that.
Yeah.
We all
Group,
get
collective.
so many questions. Well, sometimes they're questions, I'll be honest. Sometimes they're attacks about the cost of staying at home and what that looks like.
Yeah.
And I get it. I get all facets of it. That's not my that's not where my rage is.
Yeah.
At the people that, you know, kind of go at us. But first we're going to chat about the cost of postnatal depression and anxiety, right? And we're just going to talk about PNDA as a whole. There are lots of other, unfortunately, perinatal mood disorders, but I think postnatal depression and anxiety is probably the most talked about or common one.
Yeah.
So we know that it costs Australia $877 million annually. And this is according to an incredible analysis prepared by the Gidget Foundation.
Just to get an idea of what that actually looks like, because sometimes people don't understand what cost is.
Yes.
So it does largely look at hospitalisation.
Yes.
But equally everything that kind of sits around that too.
Yes.
So the dollar figure largely looks at being hospitalised or being admitted into somewhere.
A mother-baby unit, would you say?
Mother-baby unit, prolonged stays in hospital just for additional care.
Yeah.
But equally, like all things that sit around the acuity side of things. So the cost doesn't necessarily look at the prevention element of it.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that this $877 million, there is no preventative.
I would be so surprised if there was.
I would almost guarantee that there's no preventative care in that dollar figure. Yeah. That is all responsive.
Absolutely. The reaction to somebody's degradation in health, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing with PNDA is that, yes, you have that particular parent that's experiencing it, but we know that the condition also impacts the child.
Absolutely, the entire family.
The wider family. Yeah, absolutely. And it's long lasting. So if I talk about my own experience, there are still things that happen in my life that may be related or not to my children or whatever else it might be, that will always be a part of me. And I don't want to get rid of those parts of me.
No.
They are parts of me, but it is a long-lasting part of me that different costs come into the way that I manage that, and mine probably looks a lot different and potentially more high maintenance to my husband.
No, there's more value. We'll call
I
it.
see it as value.
The value is, well, certainly what we know. We know this through lots of studies, certainly, but through our own workings, and certainly we are in really good relationships with psychiatrists and psychologists who tell us so, and we know it to be true. If the mother, the main caring parent, be
Male,
mother or female, father or other, if there is care given there, it trickles through the family.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
but also the sometimes it doesn't need to just be that mental health professional in a psychologist or a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
So that preventative care looks a lot more holistic, and I think this is something that we place huge value on at home, because while at this point in time we don't necessarily have an in-house psychologist, because we like to embrace our guests' healthcare professionals around them. And while we have people that we can tap into if someone doesn't have that service available to them, there is so much more that is involved than just that psychologist or psychiatrist.
Absolutely. One of the biggest things that we focus on in general prior to someone arriving with us is support network. So, yeah, absolutely, that's made up of psychologist or psychiatrist, or, it can be made up of really amazing GP, or like I've got like the best friends who are just in my grill. They know when something's up with me. It could be like family as well, but in general, like it's rallying the people around you.
Absolutely. It can look like a gym membership.
Absolutely.
It can look like a regular reoccurring thing that you do weekly, whether that's a massage, whether that's meditation, whether that's just going for a run and moving your body, whether that's, there are all of these other wider things that don't necessarily have to look like a weekly, fortnightly, monthly psychology session in order to support and, I suppose, be that really nice add-on to that mental health.
Yeah, we know that's not some people's jam. We have had plenty of people come and stay with us who, you ask them, like, they may present incredibly heavy, like they carry a very heavy burden, and you ask them if they have someone that they speak to about this, and they might say, oh, look, I speak to my partner about this, but no, I need the gym. I go to the gym every week or twice a week. I go for a walk every day, and that is my soul cleanse. Like this does not have to be,
it doesn't need to be a medical style.
No.
But I think, do you think that also in that 877 million, looking through the data on that, there's those costs are those prescriptive sort of medical.
Absolutely. I think, again, like we said, there is what we know to be true, and something that we are working so hard to change the narrative on is the focus is so heavily on birth and pregnancy. Which is an incredible start. That's great. Like, let's talk about that, because there's a lot going on in, bodies and minds and hormones and, how a pregnant person interacts in the world and, what then that eventually means. But that journey is short. 9 months is very short.
Mm-hmm.
The birth itself, even shorter.
Yes.
And then, you know, so we spend so much time investing in that. And certainly we know that healthcare is heavily weighted in that direction. And this 877 million is like a reaction to us not focusing on that at all.
Absolutely.
And not prioritising what postpartum actually looks like.
Yeah.
And for us, we feel that interacting in that space and talking to as many people as we can about how to value what your postpartum looks like. And that's different for everyone. We're not for everybody.
Absolutely.
But equally...
Yeah, we're not talking specifically about like home is the silver.
No.
We're very much talking about the general preventative cost of postpartum care.
Yeah.
And in our opinion, what should be fundamental, foundational pieces of that care once you give birth.
I mean, for me, there's a big part of this that sits around education. Yeah. And certainly there's more of that happening. And if the government's got that much to blow on, you know, this reactive measure, then it would be wonderful to see it actually put to use in a place that works in a prevention.
And that's the ideal scenario, right? The ideal scenario is that government and private health insurance get on board. They give the permission slip for that birthing person and women to go, oh, okay, I can do this because the systems around me have told me that I can have this care because it's necessary.
Yeah. And like we said, that looks different for everybody, but there is so much that I certainly did not know when I stepped into postpartum, that there is a world where people, this is what they do. Yeah, we're in it, but there are like physiotherapists. Yeah. There are gyms. There are community groups that interact in that space, all for prevention. There are postpartum doulas.
Yeah, there's a whole community network.
There are osteos. There are so many different people that work in this field. Nutritionists, naturopaths, dietitians. Like, honestly, it is so broad that there would not be a person in the world that could not find their niche in this for to start to leverage their support. But it's not there.
As you're talking, it's really interesting because I'm like, the system will acknowledge that you can specialise as a psychiatrist or psychologist in perinatal. So we're giving that enough weight and acceptance to go, there's an issue that exists there that we're going to actually provide a specialisation in this period, but we're actually not going to value it enough beyond that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the reactivity, isn't it?
Right.
Like, they obviously, it's seen. We know. Yeah. We know the stats. We've already spoken about them. We know that they're high and unfortunately increasing.
And we know that there's economic costs in amongst that, right? Sure. So there's a huge cost to productivity. There's a huge cost, you know, and I talk about this a lot, about the impact of women back in the workforce, if that's the choice that they want to make. And the reality is most women do want to get back into the workforce. Yeah. And so let's support that if that's the choices that they want to make. And how are we doing that so that we're not having this increasing model of that kind of I can do it all approach. I know, so I'm speaking from personal experience.
Well, I mean, we sort of touched on this earlier, but, you know, if that's, you know, main caregiving person is not okay, what does that look like from a like fold-on effect, from a social well-being impact on the greater Black community? You know, that like what we then deliver on to our children helps to shape them, right? So do we not value that? We absolutely know this, that what you put out is received.
And when we think about relationships as an adult, the first relationship that we cultivate as a person earthside is our relationship with our mother, right? It's that first connection of how you build relationships. With the statistics the way that they are, we know that that is not going in the direction of good, healthy, foundational relationship building.
Yeah.
And so the work that we do at home, because that's what we can speak to, is that we understand that the work that we're doing is very much generational.
Absolutely.
Our whole mission is to work in a preventative space, but the reality is that we are also bridging very much on that reactive, responsive care, because we are getting guests that are diagnosed with perinatal mood disorders. We are getting guests who have it without being diagnosed. Excuse me. And we can see that, feel that, hear that. So as much as we want to work in that preventative space, and we love it when we get guests who are like, no, I need this care.
Yeah.
We are still very much dealing with the boil over of the current statistics.
I think even when people plan ahead, which is wonderful, but like people knowing that this is what they will need at this period of time or that period of time, and that can be a stay with us or other, you know, like for me, certainly, like me planning my postpartum was, well, everyone says you've got to fill your freezer.
Yeah.
So that was kind of, and clean your house, make sure you wash the baby's clothes. Like that, like it is just so impractical for for longevity of what that looks like, I guess. And now with, you know, the social constraints that we all have, whether it be returning to work or other, this vision of a perfect interacting parent in society is so hard. And I guess like we know certainly coming up is the Scene documentary, which is coming.
Cannot wait.
Yeah. So that premieres in March. But
yeah. When you're listening to this, that might be out. I can't wait to see that. There's obviously some incredible names in amongst there, Lael Stone being one of them, who we have had on the podcast before, and that I have, you know, had many interactions with over the years while creating home, but also, you know, Dr. Billy Garvey as well, who is incredible.
Yeah.
Who, we would love to get on the podcast.
Billy?
Yes. But, you know, and there's so many other incredible people that are a part of that documentary. So if you haven't heard of it, I highly, highly recommend that you get to see it, because it explores how personal healing transforms parents and how parents and the impact, once we heal as parents, the impact that then has on our children. And
Absolutely.
So I think it's gotten to a point now where this is on many different levels becoming a huge social crisis. And we're seeing this in child behaviours and, you know, all of these things that are being thrown at us.
Yeah.
And I get it. It's really hard for us to face some of our own, like you said, you know, there's some wounds and scabs we don't want to pick. And that is really hard.
I think certainly from sitting in this position, we know that it's really hard to prioritise ourselves. And that feels like the selfish thing to do. But I absolutely love this quote by Dr. Billy Garvey.
Yeah.
How do I make sure that parents understand I'm not being generous in saying I need you to think about your own mental health. I actually need you to do this for your kid.
Yeah.
So I think that if you flip it, it feels less selfish.
Yes.
Not that I think it's a bad thing to actually put yourself forward. It is just incredibly hard to do that.
But the social construct, you're right, is that if I do this for myself, I'm being selfish, it's a luxury, it's all of these things. But Dr. Garvey hits it on the head with actually no.
Yeah.
This is about you doing it for your child.
Honestly, I cannot tell you how many people that I speak to on the phone who are like, prior to them coming in, and they say, you know, my mum or my auntie or so-and-so said, why do you need this?
Yes.
Like, they feel that family, like, am I not giving you enough? It's actually not about that, because
Yes.
most people struggle to take something from their family, and a lot of what we do at home is learning, like teaching and like getting people to understand that actually this is how you ask for what you need, and actually understanding what it is that you need. And that can be as simple as, I actually just need a tap out. I just need a hot minute. And a hot minute might be different for everybody. Equally, you know, being able to understand that it's actually okay to put you first, because if you need to flip it and say, I'm doing this for my child, I'm taking a minute so that I can be a better person to my, like, so that I can grow and raise my child. I think that is a much nicer way to take away the sting of, oh, I'm being selfish.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
the way you need to put it.
And we've got a full episode on why we find it hard to ask for help.
Yes.
It's such a huge topic for me. I think particularly because you and I in particular speak to a lot of different people across a lot of different areas within this system. So we're speaking to everybody from our end users, being our guests, to hospital CEOs, to obstetricians, to psychiatrists, psychologists, to GPs. So we are touching on every facet of this industry.
Yeah.
If I have to break it down in, you know, to something more palatable in terms of, you know, the system at large. And I think the interesting thing for me, and what I keep asking myself, is where did we go wrong? Because when I speak to anybody from the East, any of my girlfriends who are from India or from Asia or from, you know, other parts of South America, I don't know where we went wrong and what happened in that process of like taking it away from us as women and birthing people.
It's,
like, what happened there that it just became that we could rest?
I think, unfortunately, there's parts of this that I think we might have done to ourselves, if I'm being honest.
I know. Well, I know I certainly I did the whole, I'm going to start a business while I'm pregnant because I can do it all. The reality in my mind was, no, this will be easier if I have my own business and work for home because I can be flexible with my time. Yeah. Anyone out there who has their own business knows for a fact that, you know, in terms of time, you'd probably go and be an employee over having your own business because it just that life
there
balance.
Are no boundaries.
Well, it's really hard to exist in that kind of atmosphere and environment.
Yeah.
But, you know, I just think we constantly diminish the value of care when the system is not in support of it or telling us that that's what we need.
Yeah.
As soon as the healthcare system tells us that this is what you need to do in order to be a better person, a more well-rounded person, then we prescribe to it. But the minute that we say, don't get out of bed for 2 weeks, you need to rest, or, you know, and I get it as well, you know, sometimes that's just not viable for people. They have to work.
Yeah.
They have to put food on the table.
I mean, we're not even talking like big generation gaps. This is like our parents. They like my mum certainly talks about, you know, we had 7 days in hospital. And then like I know that my grandmother was over a lot, and
Yeah.
that was kind of her job.
Yeah.
She didn't really have a social life that sat around that. Or, I mean, she did, but it was us first
Yeah.
to be there to help support in the background. Now things have changed, and that's okay. But most like grandparents now are definitely not as hands-on as what, they were, because they are living their own lives separately. So there's like a big chunk of support that's gone, and that's okay. But then we've done it to ourselves in that as well, that we think, oh, well, I can get back on and, go back to work or go out for that coffee the next day after I've just gotten home from hospital and I don't know which way is up, but that's okay because I need to be seen to be doing the things. And I guess, the value of cost versus like the prevention versus treatment.
Yeah.
The lines are blurred. For me, certainly treatment is relevant to put some cost around that, because you will inevitably always get people who fall through the gaps. If not, you will all like needing to invest in treatment to support the prevention is very important as well. But it is so heavily weighted on that reactive element that, the preventative stuff is heavily forgotten.
I think, the catchphrase that we always get is, oh, no, I couldn't stay at home. That's way too expensive. Or, oh, well, at your price point, you need to be, And I will guarantee you that if you don't end up in that recovery area, and I'm not saying, like, I'm just going off the stats, right? 1 in 5 of women, you will end up in that healthcare system needing that responsive care.
Yeah.
Right? And 1 in 10 men will end up in that system needing that responsive care.
Yeah.
If you go and add up siloed, individual, everything that, and this is just, I'm just taking home as an example because obviously I know it acutely. There are lots of other things that you can get in-house.
Yeah.
But if you add up all of the specialist areas that we have available to you through your stay, and well as 24/7 care, I can guarantee you, and I can tell you actually as a fact, that in terms of this 24/7 care, what it looks like as a postpartum hotel, if we look at it as a category, we are the cheapest globally that you can get, right? And we still have people say, at your price point, that's too expensive. And I know that it does feel heavy and it is expensive for a lot of people.
Yeah, but it's where the value, like
where we place that
prioritize
value.
that value.
Do you feel there's more value in you falling off the cliff, ending up as a statistic and needing years and years and years of treatment? Or do you place the value on you valuing yourself enough and your child to invest in the care initially up front and starting off on the right foot? It's not a silver bullet, right?
It's not.
You are still going to have stuff that happens. But I'll never forget one of our guests saying, my hard days don't feel that hard because I know now how to fill my cup. I know now what feels how I should feel. And I don't get to those points of feeling like I'm on that cliff of overwhelm, like I just can't do this anymore and like this is getting too much.
I think the value in that is tenfold, in all honesty.
Absolutely.
And this is not a unique story for us.
No.
Like, certainly we know that the investment in you, the individual, far outweighs caring for you in crisis.
Absolutely. And the knock-on effect of that generational benefit, like we just need to think beyond what it's doing for you as an individual. And yes, we can go on about those benefits and that initial cost feels heavy. But I can guarantee you that the cost of preventative care far outweighs the cost of responsive trauma-based care.
Yeah.
Every time.
Agreed.
I'm going to just lower my blood pressure there.
We could keep going all day, but we won't.
I think it's just, why do we have to wait until we're in that crisis? And I think that's a question, if you're sitting in the car listening to this, if you're walking, if you ask yourself that question.
Yeah.
Why do I feel like I have to wait till I'm in crisis to think that it's okay to have this care?
And to justify that.
Justify it.
Yeah. I mean, certainly if you think about this with a clear mind, it makes complete sense to invest diversely.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be home. Have a plan, whatever that looks like. If you want to invest in 2 or 3 nights a week of having a night nanny, because you just value your sleep and you know that you're a better person for that, save for that.
Yeah.
Do that.
Yeah. That's your planning, not your filling your freezer. Not your...
And it looks different for everyone.
It does. And it might be, I know that I've got to be back moving, and we certainly have this through the people we meet as well. I need to be moving my body again. Yeah. So invest in what that looks like afterwards, because that's a big chunk of a lot of people's mental health. But
the cost of preventative care is going to be a lot less than the cost of that responsive care every time.
This has been fun.
Oh, well, yeah, okay. Got to go for a walk around the block now. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We always love everyone's feedback. This is a nice little hot topic. So, we're always open to everyone's suggestions. But thank you, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.
This podcast represents the opinions of our hosts and their guest speakers. Views and opinions expressed in the podcast are our own and do not represent that of our places of work. This podcast is for informational purposes only, and content here should not be taken as medical or professional advice. Please consult your healthcare professional for any personal recommendations and medical care. While we make every effort to ensure that the information we are sharing is accurate based on the best available information at the time of recording, we welcome any comments, suggestions or feedback via our website contact form, home.com.au/contact. Names and details of personal experiences may have been changed to allow for anonymity and privacy. To join the conversation, join us on social media at Home Postpartum.